You're listening to Talk Star Wars, a proud member of the Star Wars Commonwealth Podcast Network. Check us out on the web at starwarscommonwealth.com and take your first steps into a larger world. Hello there, and welcome back to Talk Star Wars, a proud member of the Star Wars Commonwealth Podcast Network and the Star Wars podcast of Emotionally 14. I'm Rob.
And I'm Brad.
Hello, mate.
Hello, how are you doing?
I am doing well. One of those busier weeks, but one of those ones, first time in a little while that I felt on top of the busy.
Yeah, I felt the same this week. I know how you feel. Maybe we're just kind of finally shaking off the post-Christmas laziness and just cracking on with being the amazing content creators that we all know we are.
I thought you were going somewhere else with that for a second. I'm glad that that's what you said.
I'm good at pulling handbrake turns like that.
Yeah, but no, everything's good. You know.
Yeah.
I've been.
So you won't be spill there. You said we're E14's Star Wars podcast.
Yeah.
And I appreciate Fire and Ready is not a podcast.
Sure.
So what is the correct term for that? Is it just YouTube series? Because that seems weird that it's so tied to a brand name. Because we don't say we're an Apple podcast or a Spotify radio broadcast.
No. But
I just think are we just a YouTube series or are we?
No.
What are we?
Well, how do you mean?
Well, if this is a podcast, what is it just YouTube series? Is the correct term for it?
I guess so.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was...
Yeah, I suppose.
Term for it.
Yeah.
My brain just decided, handbrake turn, took myself by surprise. But,
yeah.
And the airbag's gone off and I'm not sure how to get back on the road anymore.
Serial video broadcast.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
That makes
video series. I think it's just video series, surely.
Yeah, I guess so.
Like a sitcom, but not.
Yeah.
Because theoretically, you could put it on other platforms. It's not YouTube specific, because it's not like an exclusive.
Yeah, that's what got me wondering.
Yeah, I suppose YouTube series is just more...
digital media.
Yeah, and it expedites the conversation, doesn't it? Because people are like, oh, they're on YouTube. So it's like, people know what that is. If you say, oh, I'm on Vimeo, it's like, who cares, honestly, at this stage? I keep seeing that.
Emotion, are you?
Yeah.
Fame beckons.
Good-o. Yeah, I look forward to accidentally finding porn when I'm looking for you.
You know what's really, really satisfying is when you're plugging the podcast to someone you've just met and they say, oh, cool, what's your podcast? Oh, it's Talk Star Wars was when we were recording or E14 Games Cast.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool, I'll have to check it out. What's it on? I'll say, well, what do you normally listen to podcasts on? And they go, oh, well, I normally listen on Spotify, and you're able to say, we're on Spotify.
Yes, that is nice.
Yeah.
That is a nice feeling. It's that
Yeah.
I'm always glad that...
We're a proper one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I've noticed this actually recently. I was talking to Blake about this the other day. Mm-hmm. There's gone from no audio dramas to absolutely dozens of really high-quality audio dramas on podcasts.
Yeah.
And I think it's fantastic. But it's really thrown me.
I wonder if it's because not shippers come sale, but the market is saturated on the... Oh, it's just me and my friends chatting podcast, and people are looking for something.
We were doing
nothing
it
wrong with them.
For a long time before anybody else. So
we were, and the new ones are great, and they're all great in theory. There's nothing wrong with that being a podcast.
Sure.
But I do wonder if the market, because that has, by its very nature, quite a low barrier to entry. I wonder if a more discerning podcast listener has started digging deeper for stuff with more substance, while also listening to the Crazy Train.
Maybe that's entirely possible. Yeah, it's.
Maybe we should dramatise old episodes of The Crazy Train. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, and just have different people play the parts.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I feel like there'll be short straw drawing for some of those, but we can see. We can always see who's interested and go from there, I guess. So, a couple of quick bits I just wanted to kind of throw in before we begin our path through the notes. So, I noticed today that we have cracked the top 20 of the TV and film charts in Kazakhstan.
Oh, wow, that's
what a thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
It's a very peculiar thing.
What was the for chart, sorry?
The TV and film podcast charts on iTunes.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a very
peculiar...
happy with
top 20 Star Wars, to be top 20 of
TV
everything.
And film. Yeah. TV and film. Madness. We are still in the top 150 in Uganda as well, so we haven't dropped off completely, so that's nice. They're still on their radar very much. That's very cool.
That's really cool.
And I'm noticing, I'm starting to get geographic kind of data for bits and pieces for people who are listening, and we've got listeners in places like South Korea, the Philippines. Oh, wow. It's a global thing, very much. Which is
this is
incredible.
The most famous I've ever been.
Which is simultaneously excellent and depressing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, boy. Yeah. And I wanted to give one quick shout out in case he's listening. So we got a new Twitter follower this week. We got a few, but this one in particular stands out. So we got followed on Twitter after a couple of kind recommendations of us from people like Alan Dunn, who these things did not go unnoticed. I'm very grateful for them. We got a follow from an actor called Christopher Sean. Now, the name might be familiar if you watch Star Wars Resistance, because he is the voice of the lead.
Oh, okay.
How cool is that?
He's keeping an eye. He's making sure Vesuvi's not dropping any spoilers. That's what it is.
I think he is here to just rein in Vesuvi's enthusiasm just in case. But, Vesuvi's a pro, so I don't think he's going to have any problems there. I know, but if someone wants Vesuvi Wrangler on their CV, they're most welcome to take. Yeah, absolutely. So we got mentioned a couple of times in a thread of him asking for Star Wars podcasts, and he would he basically kind of made it clear that he would give preference, understandably so, to those who talk about Resistance in any capacity. So we got mentioned very kindly in general, and he seems to have. At the very least, he's followed us on Twitter. So hopefully that means that we are greeting him as we speak.
Superb.
Which is lovely, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So he'll enjoy this because it's time for Vesuvi's spoiler-free Resistance Roundup. So for those who are coming to this for the first time, one of our Knights of the Commonwealth and one of our loyal listeners, Vesuvi, has been kind enough for the entire series to provide a spoiler-free breakdown of every episode so that people can enjoy the progression of the story without getting any kind of major storyline bits taken away from them. And they still get to go in fresh if they come to it for the first time. So
it's really cool.
It's really excellent. And, this week's installment is no exception. So, bearing in mind that the next message from Vesuvi is lengthy, did you want to read this bit?
Yeah, sure, I can do this. I just finished watching The Dozer Dilemma. I think it's Dozer or Dozar. Dozar the Dozerian, which starts out with Kragan and Skreek having a holographic parley with Commander Pyre as Captain Phasma loomed in the background, which is mostly what Captain Phasma does, in which the Golden Operative pressed for pirates to take something valuable from Dozer, which should encourage him to allow the First Order to take a more active role in protecting the Colossus. Kragan contacts Sinara, who seems reticent to assist. Over on the Colossus, Tam and Tora are playing a game together in Aunt Z's tavern, when Kaz and Sinara join the group. Tora then invites them all up to her quarters in Dozer's tower to play her new holographic shooting game, Drone Blaster.
Ooh, I'd play that.
Imagine taking aim. I'd happily pump some pound coins into that there, Margit.
Yeah.
Imagine taking aim at multiple virtual Marksman H training remotes. This might be just for towing the door Sinara would need if she decides to help Kragan. The rest I'd better let you wait for, but we do get to see Buggles again, and the usage of an electromagnetic pulse grenade, commonly referred to as a droid popper, which you might recall often seeing in the Clone Wars. Indeed I do, don't mansplain to me. That's really cool.
Yeah, nice. And Vesuvi has helpfully included a bunch of links to
there's a lot there.
Kragan Gore, Skreek, Pyre, Emmanuel Dozer, the Colossus, Sinara, Tamara, Tora, Aunt Z's Tavern, Dozer Tower, Marksman H training remotes, Buggles, and an electromagnetic pulse grenade.
Have you noticed that Wikipedia's changed hosts?
Oh, yeah.
It used to be StarWars.wikia.com.
Yes,
it's now StarWars.fandom.com. That's a relatively recent thing. I couldn't tell you exactly when, but I noticed it relatively recently, and I check Wikipedia relatively often.
Fair. I mean, it's it's good to be kind of brushing up, Yeah. So, thank you for that, Vesuvi, and thank you in advance for your significant message, which I'm about to read in full. So, regarding episode 153, which is last week's show.
I remember it well.
Yes, indeed. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Brad. Thanks, Carlos. We had a guest appearance from Carlos last week, of course.
We did.
Firstly, I'd like to compliment Denver Derek's exquisitely expressed message. And it really was. It was a lovely kind of ode to, passing the torch to younger fans and that kind of, it's not for me, but that's okay mentality, which I think we all, we all struggle with at some point in our lives in some form. And Derek phrased it more beautifully than I've ever seen it written before. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I've taken some, I've got a slightly different take on it, but I've certainly taken some of what he said on board, I think.
Yeah. I would agree. I'm kind of a percentage, a majority there, but with some caveats. Vesuvi continues. Secondly, I'd like to give Down Under Dave my pitch for how I would have handled the sequel trilogy. Now, I shall caveat by saying that this is, I suspect, slightly tongue-in-cheek, as we have come to expect from Vesuvi over the months.
I think she's going to have to get her tongue surgically removed from her cheek at some point.
She might have to have one of those separate. Maybe she's had one of those spacers like you have in your ears.
Yeah,
and she's just kind of, just gone with it and just gone for that. Episode 7. We find out during the opening crawl, as with autoerotic asphyxiation, when Luke was being strangled under the fetid...
Ask your parents, kids.
Yeah. When Luke was being strangled under the fetid water in the Death Star's trash compactor, he discharged a shimmering droplet of his DNA, which inadvertently impregnated the Dianoga. Honestly, it just goes on like this.
and you won't have Ian on this show.
I know about won't. Haven't.
Yeah.
The fertilized spores were released into space after the station's destruction and drifted around until 16 ABY, when 3 of these dormant offspring finally encountered a planetary atmosphere on which they could flourish. So there were 3 half-human, half-Dianoga children, all remarkably attractive despite their tentacles.
That's something Lovecraft once said.
Indeed. Just reaching their 18th year by 34 ABY.
Okay.
Their names, given to them by beings confounded by their unique appearances, were Flummox, Bump, and Cuddles. Turns out they were all subsisting on a marshy world called Glaku, where they were all working as scavengers. When happenstance all brought them to a selling station simultaneously, they noticed the uncanny resemblance and decided to hang out together. They started comparing notes and realized... So hang on. They've all been working as scavengers and they all just find their way together?
I think I've got a migraine coming on.
All right, well, let's get through this one and see how we get on.
They sound like my doctor.
They started comparing notes and realized that their dreams are remarkably similar, all surrounding a blonde humanoid with a robot arm and a laser sword on a rocky island on a mostly oceanic world. There are 2 hard words to say together.
That's also a really specific dream.
Indeed, yeah. They decided to consolidate their savings and embark on a quest to see if this humanoid was real and if he could help them solve mysteries of their existence, etc. There was also a space battle at some point involving the latest galactic threat, the First Order. Leia leads a ragtag resistance. You know the drill. Now,
that explains it exactly as well as the movies do.
Well, quite. But what I love about
it... battle, I suppose.
I don't know, battles and stuff, pew, 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 and all that jazz.
I feel sorry for the guys who got to write the hits.
What I love about this is she goes into this, excruciatingly loving detail about these 3 half-human, half-Dianoga, let's be fair, monster children. And, there's a battle and stuff, all that jazz.
Yeah.
just sweep that to one side. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah. It's like how Garth Ennis tackles a story arc. Yeah, this is really good. I'm bored now.
Yeah, kind of. Or, obviously how JJ did indeed originally... his reputation preceded him.
I'm not saying that J.J. Abrams and Garth Ennis should work together, but I am saying I'd read that.
I would read that totally. Yeah. I couldn't read
if that. Garth Ennis just want to write for Star Trek, that's fine by me as well.
Yeah, I can't.
Because most of the creatures have got bums for faces anyway. He's in his element.
That is fair. Yeah, and ultimately, I couldn't read that fast enough if you paid me. So. That's episode 7. Yeah. What you would call it, I'm not sure. I don't know.
No.
Yeah. No, indeed. Yeah, nope. Episode 7. Nope.
Episode 7. Nope.
Yeah, just the opening crawl is, it just reads, I've no idea. I can't even put this into words.
The Empire strikes randomly.
Yeah. So, episode 8.
Yes.
During this long search for the correct of countless aquatic planets, Flummox, Bemp, and Cuddles realized they had uncanny abilities that most others apparently lacked. When focused, they could be remarkably fast, or dexterous, or intuitive. On a whim, they decided to combine their instincts to punch in specific coordinates in the Navicomputer, which, what do you know, brought them straight to a watery world with a spattering of stony islands, one of which inhabited by an irascible geezer called Luke Skywalker. He taught them how to fish and how to make excellent use of the mimea of thalassirens. Brackets. I'm going to read this bit because I realise it's a postscript, but a side note, but I'm going to read it. Note how I avoided the mention of nipples as to not offend sensitive listeners. I don't think...
So irascible geezer is just...
It's wonderful.
It's the idea of that phrase existing in Star Wars.
Yeah. It says, you remind me of this irascible geezer we've been seeing in my dreams. Oh,
you thought him a Clone Wars? Yes, I was once an irascible geezer like your father was.
I have to go back and listen, but I feel like it wasn't the word nipples that made me not read that bit. I feel like there was more to it than that. But
I mean
they're a biological thing, ultimately.
I mean, you're fine with autoerotic asphyxiation by this point, so the gates are very much thrown wide.
Apparently. And showed them 28 decent recipes requiring unpasteurized green milk. So she'd leave that in. I don't know. Okay.
I mean, of all the things Vesuvi said, that's what causes offence.
As the three visitors gobbled up these soupy, verdant dishes, old Luke recognized something of himself in them, and after a visit from Ghost Yoda, realized these three multiple appendage youths were his children.
Children in inverted commas.
Yeah, indeed. I don't feel like he consented to this, but...
No. Ooh, no.
Yeah.
This is getting worse, isn't it?
Yeah. He was so relieved he didn't have to pay child support. Okay. But since they were there, and since he was bored, he decided to teach them the ways of the Force. Leia and Han sent a transmission asking Luke to join them in the current fight against the First Order. His back was aching, so he sent his 3 newfound kids instead.
I mean, that is basically what happened in last year.
Yeah, fair. Even with the aid of Han and Leia's son Ben, a properly trained young Jedi, they got their asses handed to them by the enemy regiment, only barely escaping with their lives. At the last second, Luke projected himself across the galaxy to bamboozle the bad guys, which left him exhausted and thirsty. He choked to death on some green milk and became one with the Force. Okay, so
she seems to be confused between Luke Skywalker and Brian Harvey.
So do you reckon they tried to convince Luke to stay another day then?
Yeah. He's run himself over with a speeder.
Exactly.
So but if you're not British, look up Brian Harvey.
Indeed. Trust us, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
So we're going into uncharted territory here. Episode 9 has not been released yet. So
what would you have called her episode 8?
That's the bit you're left in.
The irascible menace.
The irascible menace. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Episode 9. Flummox, Bump, Cuddles, and Ben, because now he's part of the crew, decided to have a powwow with the supreme leader of the First Order, Snoke. Snoke told his complete story, spanning the 124 years of his life. Revealed his... Brobdingnagian. Oh, thanks. That's, yeah. Sure. Brobdingnagian species was from either wild space or the unknown regions. Maybe
he doesn't know.
Maybe his mum was from one and his dad was from the other.
Sure.
Mars and Venus of the Star Wars universe are completely different regions of space. Satisfied with this tale, they all decided to go out for a meal together. The chef, Rose, did such a fine job.
Really? That's what to keep it in? You couldn't have put Dex in there?
No. Or DJ. Why not?
Dex makes more sense. He's actually a chef.
This is true. The chef, Rose, did such a fine job that they all ate till their bellies hurt. And the restaurateur, Ray, comped their meal. Amazing. Oh, wonderful.
Oh, just didn't see that going.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Snoke was so charmed by these young folk that he decided to seize his dark side ambitions and leave the New Republic to sort out their own squabbles via democratic processes. It must have been one hell of a meal.
Yeah.
Ben, after having one too many mugs of Sashin Leaf Mead, hooked up with Bump, the most feminine of the three squid-like Skywalker siblings. Aren't they related?
Well, if they are...
They're Luke's children.
Yeah, they're first cousins, yeah.
Yeah, that's not...
That's
a bit
frowned upon.
Jeremy Kyle, Maury Povich, isn't it?
It's first cousins is
not considered... not
considered normal, not considered illegal in this country anyway.
Is it not illegal?
I don't think first cousins was.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I've never looked into it.
I mean, it's always been academic for me, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because there are significant age differences in both directions with all of my cousins. So it was never even something that was in the theatre of operations.
Yeah. No, I understand. I have similar hang-ups. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's not the only ones I would have had.
No, exactly. But, it's not even a consideration.
No, indeed. Their union produced a litter of children. They all looked exactly like Ben, except their ears were tentacles. Oh, okay. So just loads of CG Adam drivers with tentacles for ears. So that's not terrifying in the slightest. Sleep well. Mm-hmm. At the baby's bris ceremony, Flummox, Bamp, and Cuddles privately spoke of how they felt so satisfied with the states of their lives and of the galaxy as a whole, but with one exception. They knew nothing of their mother. Right on cue, the force spirit of their father, Luke, appeared. He said, "Let me put your mind at ease. All I remember about her is that she's too clingy for my taste." Roll end credits.
Brilliant.
With gratitude beyond expression, Vesuvi, Knight of the Commonwealth. Vesuvi, we are the ones who should be grateful because you put so much love into these delightful interludes that it's hard to not just read them with a massive smile on my face, which is exactly what happened in this case. It's just every time you just outdo yourself, and it's just wonderful. And I'm really grateful that you choose to share them with us.
Yeah,
and it does also highlight the fact that we need to do ours as well.
Yeah, I did a fact check. It is legal to marry your first cousin in the UK. Other countries and regions may vary.
I'm sure that was the thing that everybody listening was worried about from the discussion we just had.
It was a sort of, I didn't want to leave someone in suspense, Rob. That was
That's
all
fair.
it was.
That's fair. You don't want to leave it on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Can you marry your first cousin? Find out next week.
Certainly, if that's all they're listening to the show for, I didn't want them to have to sit through another 40 minutes of us talking about Snoke again or someone else's fan fiction, which we spend an hour poring over, because they're sat there on their commute to work going, oh, yeah, this is all a non-stop slice of Hollywood sci-fi excitement, coupled with philosophical debate and
utter delight,
irreverent humour and irascible geezers. But can I pop a question to my cousin?
Yeah, indeed. Is Susie going to have to wait for that ring from another man? Clearly, no. But at the same time, just think it through, please. That's all we ask. I can't really say much more of that, but just, is it really what you want?
Welcome to Talk Star Wars. We can't believe it's come to this. But at the same time, if you've been listening to the show since I joined, it's probably not a surprise by this point.
Well, quite so. And I think, if nothing else, I think it illustrates a couple of things. More people should send in their trilogy ideas, and the bar is high.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And I don't believe it's the only thing that's high when these things are written. But,
no.
I don't mean to sound libelous, but, just a suspicion, just a hunch of mine. I'm not basing it on anything other than just, it's just one of those things I wonder. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Vesuvi, as I say, very grateful for that. For that. And, we are always happy to hear from you, but the creative writing stuff, you just outdo yourself every time.
Yeah.
And I can't quite put into words just how much I appreciate it. So our next message, no pressure, no, just to go from there, comes from Arthur, and it's about everybody's favourite Sheev, Palpatine.
Hey!
So Arthur writes, "Hello again.
Hello there.
My head has been swirling regarding Palpatine. and I only know what I have seen, not read. Did Palpatine learn how to create life from Plagueis? I could see why...
That sounds like a keystroke.
Yeah, that's the weird one that's like Command, Cloverleaf, Shift, F4, save, create life.
Did you remember to save, create life? What?
Yeah. You have unsaved life. Would you like to save your life?
Yeah.
You have unsaved life that will be lost.
A fatal error has occurred.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you revert to saved created life?
Yeah. Do you reckon they call the hard drive backup in Star Wars universe rather than calling it Time Machine? It's the World Between Worlds, because that's kind of them. That's kind of their vehicle, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I hope that's the case.
Yeah,
save create life.
I could see why Palpatine created the research facilities because. Okay, so I think so. I could see why Palpatine would create research facilities because it is the one thing he could not or did not learn. With the cloning and technology and force powers, he tries to create life. Does he promise Vader an attempt at creating Padme, or does Vader try on his own?
Ooh, I'd read that.
Fast forward to the current trilogy. I see Kerry Russell's character as an older version of Rey. Maybe all of the Knights of Ren are clones of Russell or older versions of Rey. They could have some connection to Padme. Is this what Kylo was referring to by finishing what I will start? Finishing what you started.
Yeah.
This feels like a deep dive into the weeds, and sure, 9 will be much simpler than this. I feel like sometimes speculation is much more fun than the reality. Thanks, Arthur.
You're welcome, Arthur.
So, question. Did Palpatine learn how to save, create life from Plagueis using keystrokes?
My understanding was the whole cloning thing and research the more people throw research facilities and cloning materials and sci-fi into this, the less able I am to marry it with creating life in that way, because that to me, I always took it as the very magic side of the Force rather than gene splicing and cloning.
Okay,
that seems a very hard sci-fi approach for people who can choke people with their minds and fire lightning from their hands. So that's I get why people go that way, but I'm trying to explain why my brain doesn't go that way.
No, I see what you're saying.
I think it's going the whole creating life, the Immaculate Conception of Anakin, all of that. I've always interpreted from a much more magic angle than a sci-fi angle. So, I mean, how do you feel about that?
I totally get where you're coming from. I think my sense of the Palpatine Plagueis life creation thing in particular, specifically, is that it was, it was something that they probably talked about, but that it was a lie that Palpatine used to get Anakin on side and kind of keep him strung along. Yeah. And over time, it became kind of less and less. Obviously, it's certainly less and less likely, even if it was possible, because Padme is, increasingly dead. I realize that's normally a binary thing, but in this sense, I feel like 18 years does feel like an
increasing amount of dead.
Emphatically dead thing, like well dead, not an option, not an issue. Don't even worry about. That
was Palpatine's trick. He was like, I would use patience. He's not getting any deader.
Maybe. It's just like, well, we could bring her back to life. It's like, it could totally wait a week.
Yeah.
Don't even tell me it couldn't. It totally could, and you know it.
Yeah.
But maybe that's it. Maybe that's maybe that notion is where it all comes from. But like I say, I've always interpreted that as it was a trick that maybe, like I say, if it had been talked about, which I'm not necessarily convinced it had, it was always a carrot that was being dangled in front of Anakin, because that was specifically what Palpatine knew he was after at that stage.
Yeah.
He knew that Anakin feared Palpatine. He didn't fear Palpatine dying. He feared Padme dying. So he was dangling that deliberately, because it's discussed before he even knows that Palpatine is Sidious.
Yeah.
It's discussed in the Opera House in that really awesome scene with the weird space ballet in the background.
Yes.
Which has that wonderful music and all that wonderful, wonderful everything. It's probably one of my favourite scenes, certainly in the prequel trilogy.
Yeah, totally. That's wonderful.
And because it just tells so much as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I really think that it's a ruse rather than anything that actually has a chance of being taught to Anakin. It's always struck me as a kind of deliberate misdirect by Palpatine, specifically targeted at Anakin and his needs and his desires.
Yeah,
because the best way to recruit him, because it's not, I say, he doesn't do it in the context of I'm a Sith Lord, I can teach you this. He does it in the thing of the Sith is a place where you can find stuff out that you need to know that the Jedi don't know you need to know, and that they won't teach you. So this is, there are ways to find, this stuff is there. You won't learn it from the Jedi, and you need to find somebody who's in the, who has experience of the Sith in order for them to teach you. So that then when he reveals himself later, in that wonderful moment where he's sort of, he says from certain death, and you just see that smile kind of creep along his face because he's like, I've got you. And that's, that's when he kind of springs the trap. But actually, up until that point, he hasn't made it clear that he's the one who's going to be teaching. He's just seeded the notion that it's there to be taught and nothing more. But that's kind of my take. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I don't believe he ever has any intention of teaching. If Palpatine does have those powers, even assume all you like that he has those powers, he has no intention of ever relinquishing that knowledge or ability to Vader, because if he ever did, not only would he lose Vader as a tool, but also Vader would likely lose most of his power because so much of Vader's power comes from hate and regret.
Yeah, so if you take away the thing that he's annoyed and hateful about, which is that he, not only that he failed to save Padme, but also that he, he sees himself as having been betrayed by the people closest to him as well.
By everyone.
Yeah. Then if he's like, oh, it doesn't matter, water under the bridge, Obi-Wan, it's all good.
Yeah.
Then, you can see that possibly not making him as effective. With the other question, so that's the next question in there. So the idea of there being the research facilities and the cloning facilities trying to create life, is he promising Vader a Padme resurrection, do you think?
Again, I swing with the sci-fi element of it. I struggle with. To turn it another way, what would Palpatine doesn't do anything that doesn't benefit Palpatine.
Sure.
So what benefit would he get from doing that?
He just, he just keeps Vader on side, I guess. Whenever there's kind of doubts about allegiance, because obviously with the Sith, there's always that rule of two thing. I guess the idea, I guess, would be that Vader would think, oh, but if I kill him before he's taught me this, or before he's delivered on his side of the bargain, then I'm going to miss out. I'm going to lose out, and there's no way for me to, he might have the
exactly.
Kind of the
as
final
you
word.
say, it's kind of the carrot he dangles.
Yeah, I think that's the only kind of interpretation, certainly that I can come up with for.
Yeah, we're open to others, but
of course.
That's my take on it anyway.
Yeah, I'm with you there. The idea of Kerry Russell being an older Rey, I mean, physically it could work in terms of she looks enough like
she's
the
an
part.
older woman. Yeah,
and she looks enough like the part that I think it wouldn't look too jarring.
She looks about as much like Rey as Guy Henry looks like Tarkin. Yeah,
exactly. Just it's be enough to make a performance work.
Yeah.
My thing would be: are we done with existing Rey? I'm not necessarily convinced we are, because that would mean that existing Rey would be a clone of older Rey.
Yes, that's my understanding of what Arthur's suggesting.
Yeah, but I don't. I don't necessarily think that would be received well.
No, but it would give some weight to Maz Kanata's line about if you stay long enough, you see the same eyes in new faces.
Oh, that's a nice take. I never thought of that, but that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things Maz Kanata says to be vague and...
Yeah.
And she's, from what started out, I thought was going to be quite a deep character, basically became the Sphinx from Mystery Men.
Yeah, I would have really liked if she'd said, if you live long enough, you see the same eyes in different faces and all these mysteries of the Force, a good story for another time. Unless somebody's really intent on subverting expectations, in which case I'll never tell.
Yeah.
But, we got DJ out of it, and I quite like him, despite his faults.
Yeah, he's good as a one-note character.
Yeah, I mean, despite his faults, I like Benicio del Toro anyway.
You know what? I like most of the sequel trilogy character. There's no sequel trilogy character I actively dislike. I just couldn't tell you why I like them.
Okay, so there's stuff that you can like without really having any kind of concrete understanding of why.
I think I said this a couple of weeks ago. I like Rey, but I couldn't tell you why.
I think she's got a bit more personality after episode 8 than she did in episode 7. In episode 7, she kind of came off like an eye-rolling snark machine.
So I like to also, if I don't think about it too much, I like all of the characters. It's only when I try and think, why do I like this character, I kind of go, I have literally no idea.
Yeah. Most of them seem to have been through an arc so far. At least you're seeing progression in their character. For me, the only one that doesn't is Finn. Because, I see Poe's gone through some growth.
In space.
Yeah, but he's gone through some growth in the sense that he's seen that his actions have real-world consequences.
Finn was barely in 8. It's hard to judge.
It's a bit of a shame.
Left him in a coma.
It's a bit of a shame.
If they'd have left him a deleted scene with him and Phasma, that would have been something.
Yes, that would have been cool. I would have been up for seeing that. Mainly because I like Finn and I like Phasma, so more of that would have been good.
Yeah, sure. Then, again, right there, I'm like, I like Phasma. Couldn't tell you why.
Yeah, but then if you, it's already the longest Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
If we then start adding on scenes,
I get stuff had to be cut. It's not. It didn't ruin the film for me because I'm not a Last Jedi hater.
No.
But yeah, like I say, the sequel trilogy characters, I like them, but I just can't explain why.
How do you feel about sequel treacle?
Sequel treacle?
Yeah. It just seems to be a thing that's in your head on the Freudian level.
Yeah, I know. You irascible geezer.
That's what they say, I think. I don't know what it means.
Yeah. The idea of Rey being a clone of an old Rey, it would be kind of cool. It was a take I wasn't expecting, Arthur.
Yes.
So, props there. But, maybe, I don't want to say they're definitely not going to do that.
Oh, for sure, yeah, because we could easily be wrong.
Yeah,
they've been filming.
There's a lot of people keep throwing the clone theories around across the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, because it's a thread that is through. It's either mentioned or direct throughout the original and prequel trilogy. Sorry, so obviously in the prequels they are there, and in the sequel, in the original trilogy, they're referenced.
Yeah,
and in the Force Awakens, they've been referenced. So there's because obviously Kylo's got that line about putting a bunch of clones in charge of Hux. In charge of Hux's efforts. Yeah,
maybe she's a clone army, something like that, isn't it?
Exactly. And it's it's clearly seen as some sort of diss about efficiency and effectiveness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which is weird because I always thought that the clones were pretty effective. They struck me as pretty good.
Yes, they were. However, history is written by the winners, and so realistically, in the Star Wars timeline, they could have been demonized or made laughable any way they saw fit. I
suppose, yeah. But then it seems weird that the First Order would go down that route because the First Order is the sort of the new, the Empire, what the Empire's become, or sort of, elements of the Empire has become. Yeah. It seems odd to me that they would be the ones to sort of bandy clones around like they're a bad thing when they're the one. They're the reason.
Weird that the Empire didn't keep droids.
Yeah, it is kind of odd because
droid deckers are awesome.
They are pretty cool. Maybe we'll see some. Maybe we'll see in episode 9. Maybe we'll see one like an old, not decommissioned, but an old kind of busted, rusted,
whatever. Was it the Darkness trilogy?
Yeah,
I'm going EU here rather than canon.
I think Dark Nest with
The Joiner King was the first book, I think. Yeah, Luke, Leia, and someone else run into a droideca that comes alive, and Luke's scared of it. They are made to seem quite tough.
Well, they are pretty effective, you know.
Yeah, totally.
They're a clever move on the Trade Federation's part, really.
Yeah,
because even two Jedi are afraid of them.
Yeah, it's an awesome design as well.
Yeah, it's very cool. But yeah, it's the idea of clone Knights of Ren is one that I can't quite swing with. I feel like the whole point of the Knights of Ren is just from the visual, they've all got different weapons and different weapons and kind of combat styles, which says to me they haven't necessarily, unless they're unaltered clones, which is possible. Mm-hmm. Then they've been subjected to the same accelerated growth and learning, in which case they'd all be proficient with the same things. Yeah, I kind of see the Knights of Ren more as being kind of a Seven Samurai of evil rather than a clone force. Yeah, that's kind of where I sit as well. Rather than having, like you say, clone forces, it's a group of, like I say, maybe Ben's sort of taken a few students with him from the academy, the ones who were kind of disenfranchised with the way it was being done, or the ones with darkness in their hearts. Mm-hmm. The Slytherins, basically. As opposed to the Gryffindors. Yeah, I've read loads, but it was just it's a perfectly good example for what I want to express. So we had a little bit of chaos behind the curtain a few minutes ago, and in the ensuing chaos, I've sort of lost track of this thread. We've gone a touch conveyex on this mofo. That's what we do. Yeah, well, quite. So apologies, we've kind of derailed, but let's pick up hopefully roughly where we left off. So I have a question about Kylo. I feel like Palpatine gets quite short shrift in the sequel trilogy. Obviously, he gets mentioned Darth Sidious context in Last Jedi. Mm-hmm. But the film is all about finishing Kylo allegedly finishing what Darth Vader started. Mm-hmm. But unless that's chucking old men down reactor shafts, I'm not quite feeling how the darkness plays in. I always initially assumed it was exterminating the Jedi was all he really knew of Vader. Yeah. He probably didn't know, or if Luke had told him, he obviously didn't believe or was persuaded otherwise by Snoke or other Dark Jedi. Mm-hmm. I always assumed it was he only really had the interpretation of Vader as we see him in A New Hope and Empire. And so that was what he saw himself as trying to fulfill. Yeah, I can see that. The possibility of there being a kind of misdirect on Snoke's part would make a lot of sense, I think, because that's the only real explanation for why he would think that Vader was, hadn't finished his work. It seems to me like the only way you can interpret that is either one of two things. Either he's finishing Anakin's work in destroying the dark side, or he's been kind of bamboozled and propagandized to the point of believing that Vader was actually kind of cut short in his prime by Luke. That was the take I had on it. Yeah, I don't know how. I mean, if there are other perspectives, then by all means, obviously send them over. But I feel like there's no other real explanation for it. I can't quite reconcile anything else. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm down for that. Yeah. And then the final question: surely Episode 9 will be simpler than Arthur's take. I have a feeling, yes. I think it will be, because we kind of forget it's supposed to be a kids' movie sometimes. Yeah, pretty much. I think it'll be very much on a par with the Return of the Jedi happy ending. Mm-hmm. So 9. I think you're right. Just because that's good business sense. Well, yeah, totally. You want to, and also it's conclusive. It's conclusive as well. It's closure. Yes, and that's what we want from this saga. Absolutely. I'm hopeful there'll be surprises along the way. I hope it doesn't just. I've yet to make a solid prediction of what I think Episode 9 is going to be, but I hope it kind of isn't overly predictable. Yeah. But by the same marker, I don't want
it overly convolutes either.
Yeah.
The edgier and darker stories that people seem to want can be in The Mandalorian, and they can be in novels, and they can be in Kieran Gillen comics. I don't think they belong in episode 9.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the episode 9 is not the place to tell a dark and ambiguous story at any stage, really. No. It has to be, the kind of high adventure, swashbuckling style of Return of the Jedi.
Absolutely. There's, like you say, Rogue One shown there's place for those stories, but I don't believe this is the space for it.
Yeah, exactly. It just seems, it just doesn't quite line up for me. And so I think it's going to be it's going to be a straightforward, simple is the wrong word. It's going to be a straightforward, high adventure, swashbuckling, Return of the Jedi style action sci-fi movie. That's my kind of sense. So Arthur, thank you for your message. And as I say, apologies if we've kind of gone off the thread a little bit in terms of where we were talking. But as I say, chaos behind the curtain, which has kind of conveyexed us a little bit. It was a busy day for book release announcements.
It was.
I count 3, which is quite a lot. They do them in batches, I realise, but I didn't notice any. I can only assume it is just a day of PR stuff. There's no event that I'm aware of that ties into it, like a conference call or anything like that.
I think it's just fallen that way. I don't think there's a convention or I'm not aware of a convention or anything like that, unless it's just the end of a month and new titles get announced.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, I haven't noticed. It feels like it's been a little while since an announcement was made. Master and Apprentice.
Probably true.
Master and Apprentice feels like the last announced batch.
That could be 6 months ago now. Yeah,
I think it is. I think it's before. I mean, certainly before Christmas. Maybe it's a earnings call thing, or who knows?
Possibly.
But, I don't know is the answer, but we have 3. So we have one young adult novel, one that seems a bit more kind of broad, and then one which is referred to as middle grade, which I'm guessing is kind of somewhere between young adult and normal
I think
adult?
it's what we call junior school in this country. It's kind of age between 8 and 11.
Oh, okay. That makes some sense, I guess. That's entirely possible. So the first one, which is the young adult one, is... So I've lost my notes. Here we go. It's called Galaxy's Edge, A Crash of Fate. It's written by an author called Zoraida Cordova, being released by Disney Lucasfilm Press, and it's really scheduled for release, I'm guessing, in the States on August the 6th, 2019. And it reads, the blurb reads, in this young adult novel, that's where they dispense the sequel treacle, is the young adult nozzle. Izzy and Jules were best friends until Izzy's family abruptly left Batuu when she was 6. And now she's back, and Jules, the boy who never left, is unsure what to make of her. While on the run from vengeful smugglers and an angry pirate, the 2 friends will come to terms with who they are and what they mean to each other.
That's nice and vague.
Yeah. So I've looked up Zoraida Cordova. She's an Ecuadorian-born US-based author, and she is most famous for a trilogy called The Vicious Deep, which sounds like an awesome name. And the Brooklyn Brujas series, as well as the adult romance series On the Verge.
Okay.
And also I think she had a short fiction in From a Certain Point of View, which is one of the stories. One of the stories in there. So she has some Star Wars form, which is good.
Yeah, that's cool.
Always nice.
I'm sure she's the right person for the job.
Yeah. Otherwise, there's lots of. There's a romance heavy bent to her previous publications. So maybe it's going to tell that kind of
possibly
star-crossed love story.
Maybe
that sort of thing. A bit like Grosse Pointe Blank for kids. Going back to your old town.
Works.
Yeah, going back to your old town and. Everything's changed except, well, most people have changed, not everything. But there you go. So that's the first one. And then Galaxy's Edge has another theme, which is Star Wars Galaxy's Edge Black Spire, which is written by I think, comparative veteran of the Star Wars publishing series, Delilah S. Dawson.
Yes.
Obviously, most notably for The Perfect Weapon. Yep. So that's going to be available on September the 3rd. Now, here's the interesting bit about this blurb.
It's for most... I'm not sure how I feel about it.
Okay, this is the one you're unsure about. It's
just the single most crassly commercial intro to a book I've ever seen.
Yes, so it reads, in this novel, a prequel to the Disney Parks experience, General Leia Organa dispatches her top spy to Batuu in a desperate search for Resistance allies. So I'm guessing it's going to be set between episodes 8 and 9. That would fit, right?
Yeah, I guess a Batuu we only know about because of the Disney Park thing, right?
Yes, so I believe
it's not referenced in Last Jedi or anything.
No, nothing like that. So my understanding is there's a strong theory that it's going to play some part in episode 9.
Okay, well, that would make sense.
Yeah, but in terms of...
Yeah, but the whole idea of a novel being a prequel to a theme park ride just... makes my skin crawl.
It's a bit weird. The one thing I do like about it, somebody pointed this out on Twitter, in sort of, obviously people react to the announcements and stuff. And one of the reactions I quite liked, which said that not everybody will have the opportunity to go to the parks for whether that's financial reasons or health reasons or just pure logistical. Then obviously this gives them a chance to kind of get a little bit of that world, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, it's just, but the fact I say it's a prequel to makes it feel like you're missing something if you don't go to the park ride, or you're missing something if you don't read the book.
I do get what you mean. It does. It's an unusual. It's a little.
I'm sure
weird.
It's perfectly fine, and it's not everyone who goes to a theme park is going to read the book. There's not going to be anything in the book that is going to be essential required reading to go on a roller coaster or whatever form experience takes.
Is there a required reading for any roller coaster that you're aware of?
No, just keep your hands inside the car at all times. Done.
I don't think that's written down. Isn't it spoken?
Maybe, yeah. Well, maybe it'll be on Audible as well. I don't know. Yeah, it just seems so crassly commercial phrased like that.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
God, I know Star Wars is.
Of course,
I know
it's a vehicle for
lollipops and pencil sharpeners and everything, and always has been. But there's just something about seeing it in black and white like that made me go, ugh.
Yeah. I almost bought a pen today, speaking of the commercial power of Star Wars, because it had Darth Vader on it. And then I realised that it really didn't have enough Darth Vader to justify the price, so I didn't buy it.
That's fair. Yeah, no, I think so. I went and bought 6 Star Wars books for my daughter today, so
yeah,
I know how you feel.
Yeah,
mostly colouring and sticker books.
Of course. I mean, to be fair, I've eyed a couple of those up. But then I do find myself looking at the ones where they've got the page of Kylo Ren and Stormtroopers and Kylo Ren shaded in. You're like, so I need red.
Yeah, I've actually got a page like that, and I'm just like, I guess I'm done.
Yeah, I'm not for nothing, but I've got a lot of colouring pencils, so I feel like I should make the most use of all the colours. Yeah,
the Works in the UK has some Star Wars colouring books.
Yeah, I think maybe I should get into that. Maybe I can turn that into some sort of Tumblr or some sort of blog where people would really dig it.
Social media platform, whatever you fancy.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Reddit's still a thing. It hasn't gone anywhere that I know of.
Yeah, but I'll read Black Spire when it comes out, and I'm sure I'll enjoy it. And I'm sure it's not going to be as bad as I fear, because so far Star Wars has been very good in terms of media punching up and punching down.
In terms of cross media, you mean?
Still, so far the only required viewing is for core movies.
Yeah. You mean in terms of cross-media stuff?
Yeah. If you, I can put this, probably the closest is Maul turning up in Solos. The closest it's come to to prior knowledge of supporting materials being assumed.
I can see what you mean. I don't necessarily think you need to have seen Phantom Menace to know that he's somebody she fears. That's sufficient, I think.
No, it's more if you hadn't seen Clone Wars or Rebels.
You wouldn't know that he'd survived. It'd be your first knowledge that he'd survived.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose I see what you're saying. But I think it's So
my wife, who has seen Clone Wars and Rebels and was still surprised he was alive because she obviously wasn't paying that much attention.
She does that. Because wasn't she also, when we were talking earlier about Palpatine being Sidious, wasn't she the only person who hasn't figured that out by episode 3?
Yes, despite the fact they're played by the same bloke. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can't criticize because I had a realization the other day. It's completely off topic, but I had a realization the other day about Pokemon. And I've been playing the games for years, and I've never realized that one character actually has a ruff and it's not a beard. But it's just close to the face that I've always just assumed it was a beard, and it was actually a ruff.
That's also, today I discovered that Cardi B is a musician and not shorthand for Bacardi Breezer.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, you could see how that might be.
Yeah.
Are they still a thing? Having said that?
Yeah, am I the right person to ask? I have no idea.
Yeah, fair point. Okay. I don't know, I feel like they've been replaced by I feel like they've been replaced by Copperbergs and Jaeger bombs.
Yeah, possibly.
They're kind of the brands that have...
Remember Hooch? Hooch is the first alcoholic Alcopop is what they called them.
Yeah. No, I never tried it myself, but I've got the feeling I'd probably have quite liked it because it's lemon flavour, and I'm quite big on lemon.
It's like that really quite cloudy yellow lemonade. Sorry, Americans, it's not what you call lemonade. The cloudy lemonade you get over here.
Yeah.
But with vodka in it, it tasted like vodka and lemon. It was perfectly fine.
Yeah, I mean the only thing that would put me off is that I'm not a big vodka person, but otherwise,
that's 50% of the content still on there.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't know if I'd be up for that. So otherwise, I mean, cloudy lemonade, I'm all over it all day. Love that stuff. But
if you ever get pink lemonade, that's amazing as well because it's with grapefruit as well.
This is true.
Yeah.
So anyway, Star Wars.
Anyway, yes.
Somebody has. I seem to recall somebody has already sleuthed out that top spy that Leia refers to that's referred to in the blurb is actually an existing character that's been depicted somewhere.
Okay.
So I forget the name off the top of my head. It begins with a V.
Oh, yes, I know.
Yeah. But I can't. Yes, I can't remember the first. It's Vi, and then it's either a surname or a first name that's different.
Yeah,
that's the bit I'm struggling with. But yes, you're right. It is Vi. I forget where she has appeared previously. I know she's depicted in Women of the Galaxy, the Amy Radcliffe book.
If someone wants to come along and mansplain to us, then this is the time when you can.
Well, yeah, right. In the instances where we don't know, it doesn't count. Yeah. It's fine. Yes. So, yeah, the third book is the middle grade novel. So this one is called Star Wars Myths and Fables, written by George Mann, and it's a hardcover from Disney Lucasfilm. In this middle grade novel, hear the thrilling space tales, fables, and myths that are told in a galaxy far, far away. The book features 2 stories that take place on the remote outer rim world of Batuu, plus many other untold tales from the edge of the galaxy, lushly illustrated in a style that pays homage to real-world children's classics. When I saw this, the first thing that popped into my head was the kids at the end of episode 8 telling Star Wars stories.
Okay.
And I could totally see an idea, like the idea of there being, stories in this that they're actually telling each other, or it's the kind of stuff that
that's the framework for it.
Yeah, like that it's myths and fables within the Star Wars universe is certainly the implication I get from the announcement, and that sounds really cool.
Yeah, I'm on board for that more than I am a prequel to a ride.
Because that's the kind of thing they did with the Legend of Luke Skywalker, right? It was a kind of set of stories
that's next on my pile. I haven't read it yet, but I know that was for general.
That's the general concept gist, isn't it? Yeah. So I would guess that this is going to be a similar kind of take. And I've seen the cover art for this, and it does kind of evoke the the children's books of when we were growing up. The what were they called? The Puddle Lane style things, and very kind of sweet box, almost like. But it's very kind of. There's also a kind of a Ralph McQuarrie style element to them as well.
Or Roger Dean,
but on the Star Wars website, they've got an actual little excerpt from one of the stories, which is called The Knight and the Dragon, which I think is the one that's also depicted on the front because it's set on Tatooine. So is that perhaps Kenobi that we're seeing in the picture? You know, it might predate it by some margin, but it's twin suns, it's knights, it's dragons. Could that be Obi-Wan? You know, I mean, even something as simple as could it be Obi-Wan taking out the crate dragon? That's, you know,
possibly.
Maybe not that one from the skeletal form in the background of Episode 4, but maybe something, you know, earlier or thing. But the one on the cover is a flying dragon. Much like the kind of the sort of mythical ones that we have, but that's not to say that it's the truth. You know, it's potentially from a certain point of view. So yeah, there's a lot of books kind of on their way.
Yeah, there's a lot of books this year.
Yeah, and what I like about it is also it's the kind of I like when they do the wide ranging stuff. So there's something for each age bracket. That's kind of cool. And actually, it almost feels like the kind of thing that. You know, the Myths and Fables one might be the kind of thing a parent can read to their kids, irrespective of age, and just the kid, you know, even though it might be aimed at, we're sort of guessing a kind of 8-9-year-old kids. I feel like a 4 to 6-year-old would probably still get a ton of fun out of this.
No, yeah, totally.
If they've got a sufficiently active imagination.
Yeah.
And I mean, it depends on whether or not they've seen Star Wars by then. But you know,
and that's assuming I've understood the concept of middle grade correctly.
I think I was going to say of books.
Yeah.
As long as I've understood them. I mean, I feel like as career paths go, if you haven't by now,
it's
not
really
ideal.
God, that'd be amazing, wouldn't it? If you just catch me at a book signing going, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah. Why do they keep bringing me these things? So there you go. It's been a little bit of a slow week this week, I have to say. In terms of we've had high quality input and we've had lots of announcements, but it's been slightly quieter than usual. But I know from speaking to listeners, sometimes people find the longer shows a bit difficult to get through every week. And I totally get that as somebody who has a lot of, you know, anybody who has a lot of demands on their time can relate to that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I just think I feel I've got to listen to this episode as well.
Well, there you go. So this is it. So
I'm a busy man. I've got to listen back to myself.
Exactly. It worked out well for you as well. So everybody wins, I think, ultimately. Yeah. And that's always a nice, you know, that's a nice environment. So there you go. But thank you very much for listening this week to Talk Star Wars, episode 154. As I say, we are a proud member of the Star Wars Commonwealth Podcast Network, which now contains 9 wonderful shows and did formerly contain 2 other wonderful shows. But, so it's the Tumbling Saber podcast, in addition to Talk Star Wars. It's the Tumbling Saber podcast, the Generation X-Wing podcast, the Nerd Room podcast, the Rogue Squadron podcast, the San Diego Sabres radio podcast, Tatooine Sons, Retro Inc., and the Sandcrawler cast. And that's a good, you know, like I say, we had excellent shows before, we still do. And we have 9, but at the same time, we are kind of, you know, there's constantly discussions going on about the possibility of new editions and things like that. So if we have anything to share, obviously we will announce it on future shows. Currently, my understanding is there's nothing in the offie. And generally, I tend to get a little bit of a heads up on these things. So I'd like to think I'm ear to the ground on this. But we are also obviously, you know, Talk Star Wars is the Star Wars podcast of emotionally14.com. So if you want to find out more about the wonderful shows we do, so that's podcasts, The Crazy Train, the E14 Gamecast, Talk Star Wars. We have video series, Fire When Ready, and HeroClix UK. Yeah. And, you know, there are wonderful blog posts that go up on there as well about video games and tabletop games and comics and movies and all sorts of fun stuff. It's basically a home for the permanently teenaged. That's how we bill it, and that's never been truer than recently. Yeah. You know, we skew for those people who consider aging a state of mind and nothing more.
Hey, we're doing it for 10 years, so, you know.
Exactly. You know,
we know what we're about.
In fact, I was going to do one of those, you know, the 10-year challenge that everybody's doing.
Yeah.
I've got screenshots of the homepage in 2009 and now.
Do it.
Yeah, I think that's got to be done. So look for that.
It has to be done. Yeah.
Look for that. Tell you what, look for that around the time this episode drops.
Yeah. Oh, you got to do that, man.
Let's do it. So I have the screenshots all ready to go. So let's do that. Around the time this episode drops, you will be able to enjoy the E14 10-year challenge, and you'll be able to see how far we've come in that time.
Oh, brilliant.
So, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Adam Sheldon for his generous use of the Talk Star Wars intro and outro music. That is always appreciated, and I very much enjoy hearing it back at the beginning and end of the show.
Yep.
I feel like I'm forgetting something, and I realise this show is a bit of a weird one, because obviously, like I say, we've had Chaos Behind the Curtain.
She's done her best to ruin it.
Yeah. But I feel like I'm forgetting something. Patreon, yes. Social media in general. Man, almost went without doing any of that. That's mad.
How important can it be?
Well, quite, we are on Patreon. And, what we do, we offer an ad-free version of the podcast, which you can get a couple of days before the main show drops. So the main show drops on a Monday in the UK, a Monday morning. And if you're a patron, you get it on Saturday morning. And what's more, the ads that you hear at the top and end of the show, and sometimes in the middle if it's a longer one, are absent from the patron version. So they get an ad-free version of the feed, and they get it a couple of days early. And in addition, a recent addition, when we release another show on the Talk Star Wars feed, like a TSW Comics by Tim and Rob, or the TSW Roundtable, then the patrons get that a full week before it drops on the main feed. So TSW Comics at the time of recording dropped today. Patrons had it a week ago. So if that's the kind of thing that interests you, it's $1 a month to join the Patreon, which you can find at patreon.com/talkstarwars. And I feel that's worth the money, But then if I didn't, I wouldn't do it. Simple, really. So, Brad, social media. If people want to find you, where is the best place?
Best place to find me, other than on this wonderful podcast, what you are listening to, or on the Emotionally 14 internet series Fire When Ready, Adventures in Star Wars Tabletop Gaming, one place you can find me, and indeed Rob, is you can find us at Cavalier 2019 on the 24th of September in Tunbridge Wells in Kent. Check out their information for that. Sorry? February, sorry. Yeah.
You said September for some reason.
Did I? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, maybe they'll do another one.
We might be there in September as well, but we're definitely there in February.
All right, cool.
I said September, sorry.
That's very nice.
24th February. Just Google Cavalier 2019 Wargaming is probably the best place to find it. We'll be there doing a Grand Army game of Star Wars Legion, which is twice the normal size.
Yes, indeed.
Of an average game. And Blake from the Crazy Train and Fire When Ready and E14 Games cast to be there, as well as the other Fire When Ready host, Ian, who I can't seem to get rid of. If you want to add me on social media, you can find me on facebook.com/Brad Harmer Barnes, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at RealBradHB, and you can buy my books on Amazon. Please do, I need money.
Yes, indeed. So you can do so by visiting emotionally14.com. There's a Team E14 page there.
There is.
And actually underneath your bio is a link to each of the books.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and it's the E14 affiliate.
Branding.
Yeah, it's the Emotionally 14 affiliate store. So if you click the link and you buy the book, you get some royalties because you wrote it. And then Emotionally 14 gets a little bit of love from Amazon for saying, thanks for sending them our way. So
I get a cut, you get a cut, you get a book, and it's all covered in bees.
Exactly. And it's the finest bees. It's just all honey. So, I don't know what I mean. If you...
His metaphor's gone away from us, run!
Yeah. So if you want to get the cut of my jib on social media, the best place to find me is on Twitter and Instagram at RobWadeVision. I also, behind the curtain, at Emotionally14 and at Talk Star Wars on Twitter and Instagram, which are the social media accounts connected up. You can email us by emailing any of the following things. So talkstarwarsinfo@gmail.com is the one that most people use. You can also feel free to email podcast@emotionally14.com and just put Talk Star Wars in the subject line. You can do it that way, or you can do podcast@talkstarwars.co.uk. That should work. Whether or not that actually still does, I haven't checked recently, but it should. But you can actually hit the show directly as well via Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and actually a new one, YouTube.
Oh, we're on there now.
We are. So we were on a separate Talk Star Wars YouTube for the longest time, and then we weren't anymore. And now we are on Emotionally 14's YouTube channel. Cool. So as of the TSW comics that published today, you can find the Talk Star Wars podcast on Emotionally 14's YouTube channel as well. So if you're the kind of person who likes to have YouTube open while you're doing stuff, which I know a lot of people who are, and it's a perfectly fine way to spend your time, then you can get the show on there too. So if you're into that,
awesome.
Or you can hit the show directly on Spreaker by visiting talkstarwars.co.uk, which domain name still works. I mentioned at the top of this outro the Star Wars Commonwealth Podcast Network, and you can find all of those shows. In case I missed one, I'm fairly sure I didn't. I've done this a fair few times now. You can find all the shows and their latest episodes on the web at starwarscommonwealth.com and take your first steps into a larger world.
Boom.
Thank you very much for listening to Talk Star Wars this week. We will see you again next week, and in the meantime, may the Force be with you.